Watching Pauline Hanson on Paul's show last night, I thought, it's time. I mean, it's past time. Hanson must now put up or risk turning into a rerun of the Joe for Canberra push. Now, this might seem like old history to some, but the parallels are too close for comfort for her and the millions of Australians who've put their hope in Hanson. And voters don't actually change that much. In 1987, another populist, Premier Joe Bjelke-Petersen, stormed out of Queensland, which is Hanson's home state, on a crusade to topple Bob Hawke's Labor government, with lines that could have been written by One Nation's Malcolm Roberts.
Can Bob Hawke be beaten by anything other than a coalition government, a coalition party?
Quite simply, yes, he can.
So you don't need the National Party and the Liberal Party together?
If the National Party behind me supported the policies I had, we could do it ourselves without any problem at all, because the Australian people are fed up to here with everything that the Labor Party are doing. They're trying to run a nation on a cracked foundation. You wouldn't build a house on the foundation they've got of 20-odd different organisations, the Communists, the Socialists, the International Socialists, the majority group, the right and the left, old guard, new guard.
Well, this Joe for Canberra push was huge news at the time, promised the revolution. Joe for Canberra was the slogan. And Joe for PM was the dream. The media was fascinated, a headline every day, and so on. A bit like Hanson at the moment, Bjelke-Petersen had few policies. But he did campaign on a tax that would cost plenty, 25% flat tax. Pauline Hanson has her own big tax idea, income splitting, something that would cost the budget $6 billion a year at least. Plus, there's other expensive promises like halving the fuel excise. That's another $10 billion a year. Now again, like Hanson, Bjelke-Petersen spent little time explaining his policies. He also avoided tricky details. And like Hanson, Bjelke-Petersen had someone who was there to explain what he really thought. Hanson is Barnaby Joyce. Joe had wife Flo, who'd explain her husband even with the man sitting right next to her in the studio.
Does he want to be Prime Minister?
Well, I don't know that you'd say he actually wants to be Prime Minister. I believe that he wants to be sure that Bob Hawke isn't Prime Minister. I think that that's the whole answer, Ray, and he's working very hard to do that. He's got good policies, and I believe they're policies that the ordinary average people will be very happy to have. A policy where it's a 25 cents in the dollar income tax, you know. And to me, if you've got 75 cents in your hand, what are you going to do with it out of every dollar?
You're going to be his campaign manager?
Oh, I suppose I could do a good job, but I'm pretty busy looking after Queensland as one of Queensland's senators, Ray.
But most importantly, like Pauline Hanson, Bjelke-Petersen, a National, split the Conservative vote and robbed all oxygen from the Liberals, then led by John Howard, who was not then the politician he became. Now, of course, Bjelke-Petersen's campaign, it collapsed. Killed largely by a lack of policy, a lack of detail, lack of coherence. And all that Bjelke-Petersen achieved was Howard's defeat and Hawke's triumph. Labor won big.
Picture this. A larger-than-life populist convinces the nation he is about to storm Canberra, drags a mountain of hype behind him, and then watches it all collapse in a matter of months. That was Joe Bjelke-Petersen in 1987. And right now, Pauline Hanson might be walking the exact same tightrope, minus the safety net. Quick favour before we get into it. If this kind of straight-talking breakdown is your cup of tea, hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell. Over 90% of you watching haven't yet, and it genuinely helps this channel keep digging into stories the mainstream outlets gloss over. Costs nothing, takes a second. Cheers if you did. Right, back to business.
Well, today's News 24 Pulse YouGov poll suggests the same could now happen again, even though Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is no Bob Hawke. More like a sitting duck than a hawk. Support for Hanson's One Nation has once more fallen, albeit this time by just 1 percentage point, leaving it 3 points behind Labor and now only 3 ahead of the Liberals, who seem to be slowly recovering. But after preferences, Labor still wins against both parties, really, despite being itself the most unpopular governing party that polls have ever measured. However low Labor's vote is, it still wins against the divided Conservatives. Hanson last night said, "Don't worry." She was finally about to announce her candidates and her policies for the Victorian election, which is One Nation's next big electoral test, and it's in just 4 months' time.
We have locked in about 74, 76 seats at the moment of the 88, so we have got our candidates.
Well, very high time indeed for them to be announced, and the policies we hope as well. But even then, it may now be a bit late, too late, because already without those candidates and policies, One Nation has dropped, its support has dropped by 1/3, according to some polls. Now down to 90% in Victoria, it's this news poll. I mean, it's still extremely good compared to where it was, but it's certainly not enough to do much except hurt the coalition. And in the meantime, the contest in Victoria has sharpened to a battle between the Liberals Jess Wilson and Labor's new Premier Ben Carroll, with One Nation barely rating a mention. Now you may say, who cares about Victoria, but failure there could be fatal to Hanson's momentum federally. It could pop the balloon, change the narrative. Now, I've said before that Hanson has reached a point where she must pivot. She's gained the voters' attention. Boy, has she done that. Now she must gain their trust. And that means being normal, because normal now is enough. Stunts like consorting with convicted thug Tommy Robinson in London this month, that's a mistake. Hanson's got to campaign like a real candidate for Prime Minister. And that means especially she's got to explain her plans again and again and again until they seem clear and safe. And, voters go, of course. That hasn't happened. And again I ask, why has Hanson, for instance, not exposed the lies that Labor tells about her call for a monoculture? I know what she meant. I've said what she meant. Why has Hanson not explained herself what she meant? Instead, we've had Barnaby Joyce trying to explain it. Bjelke-Petersen used to have a catch cry. Don't you worry about that. But Hanson must. She must worry and must sweat those details, must sweat those policies, or all this excitement will be for nothing.
Let us rewind the clock. 1987, Queensland Premier Joe Bjelke-Petersen launches the infamous Joe for PM crusade. Big rhetoric, bigger promises, a flat 25% income tax, and barely a policy document in sight. Sound familiar? Fast forward to today, and One Nation is promising income splitting worth $6 billion a year and scrapping the fuel excise for another $10 billion without a fully costed plan to back it up. History does not repeat, but gee, it loves to rhyme. Here is where it gets interesting. Bjelke-Petersen leaned on his wife Flo to explain his vision when questions got too tricky. Hanson has Barnaby Joyce playing a strikingly similar role. Great for headlines, not so great for accountability. And just like Joe's crusade fractured the Conservative vote and accidentally gifted Bob Hawke another term, Hanson's rise risks doing the same favour for Labor today. Now, let us talk numbers, because polling does not lie, even when politicians wish it would. Nationally, One Nation has slipped a point. In Victoria, some polling shows support down by roughly 1/3. With the state election just 4 months out and around 75 candidates locked in, One Nation still hasn't released detailed policy. Meanwhile, the real contest between Labor's Ben Carroll and the Liberals' Jess Wilson is sucking up all the oxygen. One Nation is barely getting a mention. So what is the fix? Simple, but not easy. Hanson needs to trade theatre for discipline. That means explaining policies clearly and often, correcting misrepresentations directly, like clarifying that her comments on shared values are not about uniformity, and steering clear of controversial associations that hand ammunition to critics. Because here's the brutal truth: attention is cheap, trust is expensive. Joe Bjelke-Petersen won plenty of headlines and still ended up a cautionary tale. If Hanson wants a different ending, the pivot from provocation to genuine, accountable policy needs to happen now, not after the votes are counted. Thanks so much for watching. Australian Signal appreciates you. Please don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments below.